My beloved brothers and sisters, there are lessons all around us hidden in the quiet, ordinary corners of life. You see, God doesn't always speak through thunder and fire. Sometimes He whispers through salt, through water, through the humblest acts of our day. Now I know some might laugh when they hear this title. Put salt in your toilet and watch what God does. But oh child, if you only knew how God uses the simple to shame the mighty, how He uses the ordinary to bring forth the extraordinary. Salt, such a small, simple grain, and yet it carries the memory of oceans, the taste of tears, and the whispers of eternity. God in His wisdom placed power in the ordinary. He hid holiness in what seems humble, and He gave the earth salt not just for flavor but for meaning. You see, salt is not merely a mineral. It is a message. It speaks of preservation, of purification, of promise. And when the Master called His children the salt of the earth, He was not speaking lightly. He was reminding us that in each of us lies the sacred ability to cleanse, to heal, and to preserve what is good. There is something almost divine about salt. It keeps what it touches from decaying. It guards against rot, just as faith guards against despair. When you sprinkle salt, you are engaging in an ancient act of balance, keeping life from spoiling under the weight of time. And when God uses salt in Scripture, He is teaching us that our souls too must be preserved by prayer, preserved by love, preserved by the courage to keep shining when the world grows dark. Think of the ocean, vast, wild, infinite, held together by salt. Without it, the waters would stagnate, lose their life, their rhythm, their power. Salt gives life its strength. It is invisible in the water, but its presence makes all the difference. In the same way, the Spirit of God may not always be seen, but oh, His presence is what keeps us alive. When we allow His Spirit to fill us, to flow through us, we become like living salt, unseen yet essential, silent yet strong. And so when I speak of putting salt in your toilet, I am not giving you a household tip. I am offering you a parable. I am saying, remember what salt means. Remember what you are called to be. Even in the hidden corners of your home, in the places no guest will ever see, let there be purity. Let there be intention. Let there be light. Because holiness, my dear, is not only for the pulpit or the altar. Holiness lives in the unseen moments, the quiet cleaning, the whispered prayer, the silent surrender. Salt has always been sacred. In the days of old, men sealed covenants with it. A pinch of salt was a promise, a bond that said, this shall not spoil, this shall endure. When you hold that salt in your hand, you hold the ancient language of covenant. You hold the same symbol that stood between God and His people in the desert. So when you cast that salt into water, into the drain, into the ordinary parts of your home, you are not just performing a task. You are renewing a covenant. You are saying, Lord, I remember I am still yours. Keep me pure. Keep me preserved. There is beauty in this simple act. Salt does not shout, but it transforms everything it touches. You cannot see it working, but you can taste its presence. It teaches us that real power is often quiet, that holiness does not boast, that God's might can move through the smallest, simplest, softest things. I have known people who thought God only moved in cathedrals, in great echoing spaces filled with stained glass and song, but I have seen Him move in kitchens, in laundry rooms, in the quiet flush of water where a woman whispered, Lord, cleanse my home, because God is not limited to holy places. He sanctifies wherever He is welcomed. And salt, that sacred, silent crystal, is one of the oldest ways to say, come, Lord, abide here. And let us not forget, salt also heals. When the skin breaks and the wound burns, salt stings before it saves. Healing is not always gentle. Cleansing is not always comfortable. When God begins to purify your spirit, He may bring to light what you'd rather keep buried. He may sting the places you've numbed with denial. But remember, salt only burns because it's cleaning what must be cleansed. The pain is proof that healing has begun. And my dear, if you feel the sting of God's cleansing, take heart. He is not punishing you, He is preparing you. Just as salt draws out infection, His Spirit draws out the darkness that hides in corners. He is not trying to hurt you, He is trying to make you whole. When He sends you a simple act to take salt, to speak a prayer, to let go, He is inviting you into a deeper purity, a cleaner peace. When Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth," He meant that your presence should preserve goodness wherever you go. That when you walk into a room, the air changes. That gossip stops, despair weakens, and hope begins to rise again. Because when you carry the Spirit of God, you season the world with grace. And oh, what a flavor grace has! It makes bitterness bearable and sorrow sweet. It keeps love from spoiling and joy from fading. So, child, never underestimate the sacredness of what seems small. Never mock what looks simple. God has a way of hiding greatness in the ordinary. Salt, just a handful of dust, can change the taste of a whole meal. And you, a single heart full of faith, can shift the atmosphere of a whole house. When you take that salt in your hand, hold it as a reminder. Remember who you are. A preserver of goodness, a purifier of space, a vessel of divine covenant. Remember that you carry the same strength that holds the oceans together. Remember that your life, touched by faith, can cleanse, can protect, can heal. So yes, put salt in your toilet. Let it fall with intention. Let it speak of your desire for purity, for peace, for God's presence in every hidden place. Because salt does not discriminate. It cleans wherever it is placed. And neither does God's grace. My dear, the salt in your hand is more than a mineral. It is a mirror of what God placed inside you. It is a reminder that you were never meant to lose your flavor. You were never meant to fade or spoil under the weight of this world. You are the salt of the earth, divine, enduring, and essential. And when you understand that, even the smallest act, even salt in a toilet, becomes a sacred offering. So let that salt fall. Let it bless the water. Let it remind heaven that you remember your covenant. Let it remind your spirit that cleansing is holy. And as the water carries it away, whisper, "Lord, wash me too." Because when you do, He surely will. And what He purifies, He preserves forever. There are moments, my dear, when your home looks clean to every eye that enters, yet your spirit knows that something unseen lingers in the air. The floors may shine, the windows may gleam, but peace seems to hide behind the curtains. The laughter in the room sounds different, a little forced, a little thin. That is when you must understand. Cleanliness of the home is not only about dust and polish. It is about energy, about spirit, about the unseen weight that settles when the soul is tired. And so, I tell you, when you put salt in your toilet, you are not merely tending to plumbing, you are tending to peace. You are cleansing not only the physical waste of your household, but the spiritual residue that collects in the corners of your heart. You are saying, "Lord, this house is more than wood and walls. This home holds my dreams, my prayers, my tears, my faith. Let nothing dwell here that does not honor you." You see, child, our homes are reflections of our inner life. The state of the space around us speaks to the state of the space within us. When confusion fills your mind, you may notice your home grows cluttered too. When sorrow takes root, the air seems heavy, no matter how many candles you light. The spirit of a house responds to the spirit of its keeper. And that is why God, in His infinite wisdom, allows us to use simple symbols, salt, water, oil, prayer, to cleanse not only the space but the soul that fills it. There is something deeply sacred about the act of cleansing. It is not just the removal of dirt, it is the declaration of dignity. When you take that salt in your hand and walk to the place where waste is washed away, you are declaring that every part of your home, even the hidden humble places, belongs to God. You are saying, "There will be no darkness in this house, not in the light, not in the shadows, not in the water that flows beneath." Salt, when used this way, becomes more than a mineral. It becomes a prayer made tangible. It says, Lord, enter this place, sanctify this space. Let every trace of bitterness, every whisper of envy, every remnant of sadness be flushed away, because sometimes the heaviness you feel is not yours. Sometimes it's the echoes of old words, old wounds, old worries that still live in your walls. Sometimes it's the energy of arguments long past, of tears that fell on the pillow and never found release. And so the salt speaks on your behalf. It does what words cannot. It absorbs, it purifies, it restores. When I was a young woman, my grandmother used to say, "Child, don't just sweep the floor, sweep the spirit." I did not understand her then. I thought she was just being poetic, but now I know. To sweep the spirit means to pray as you clean, to speak blessings as you wipe, to pour gratitude into every act of care. It means that your broom becomes a wand, your mop becomes a ministry, and even your salt becomes sacred. Because holiness does not live only in the church, it lives in the care you give to what God has placed in your hands. Your home is your first sanctuary. It is where you rest your head, where your children dream, where your prayers rise like incense. If the spirit within it grows heavy, you will feel it in your bones. That is why spiritual cleansing must become as natural as physical cleaning. The toilet, that humble vessel, takes away what no longer serves you, and in that, it becomes a symbol, a place where you can release the unseen burdens too. You can say, this fear, this anger, this sorrow, it no longer belongs to me. And as the water carries it away, you will feel lighter, freer, more at peace. There is a rhythm to cleansing. There is a poetry in release. The world will tell you that what you are doing is superstition. But faith, my dear, is not superstition. It is intention. When you act with purpose and belief, the very act becomes prayer. When you put salt in your toilet with faith, you are not practicing magic. You are participating in divine alignment. You are saying, God, I believe you are present even here in this quiet corner where nobody else would think to look. And God loves to be invited into the small things. He moves most powerfully in the ordinary. He turns water into wine, dust into man, salt into covenant. And when you invite him into your home, truly, fully, intentionally, you will feel the difference. The air will shift. The silence will sweeten. Even the walls will seem to breathe again. Because holiness, when welcomed, fills every crack, every crevice, every space that once felt forgotten. I have walked into homes where peace lived in the walls. You could feel it before a word was spoken. The table was simple, but it carried love. The chairs were worn, but they carried warmth. That, my dear, is what a spiritually clean home feels like. It may not be perfect, but it is filled with grace. And grace, once it enters, lingers. So as you put that salt into your toilet, don't rush. Move with reverence. Speak softly. Lord, as this salt dissolves, let your peace dissolve my burden. Let this act cleanse what eyes cannot see. You don't need a ritual. You don't need a script. You only need sincerity. God meets you at the level of your truth. And when you finish, stand for a moment. Listen to the sound of the water. It is a holy sound, the sound of letting go. It says that what was once heavy has been released, that what was stagnant now flows, that what was tainted has been made pure, and in that sound you will hear a whisper of God's own rhythm, cleansing, restoring, renewing. Because, beloved, the truth is this: cleanliness of the spirit brings clarity of the mind. Purity of the home invites presence of the divine. And when your space is filled with God's peace, even the smallest room becomes a cathedral. So keep your house not only neat but holy. Keep your home not only clean but consecrated. Let every corner carry intention, every sound carry gratitude. And remember, the salt you pour is not wasted. It is a message. It tells heaven, this is God's space. It tells your soul, this is my peace. And it tells every shadow that ever tried to linger, you have no place here. That, my dear, is the meaning behind the act. You are cleansing your home, yes. But more than that, you are cleansing your spirit. You are preparing room for miracles. You are creating an environment where faith can breathe freely. And when faith has room to breathe, God begins to move. He moves in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the water that carries your burdens away. And what remains when all else is gone is peace. That sweet, steady peace that only a spiritually clean home can hold. Faith, my dear, is a living thing. It is not a statue sitting still in the corner of your soul, waiting for you to glance at it once in a while. No, faith is movement. It breathes, it hums, it stirs beneath your skin and whispers to your heart, do something. It calls you to act even when you cannot see what lies ahead. Faith does not wait for proof. Faith becomes the proof. So, when I say that putting salt in your toilet is an act of faith, I am not talking about the salt itself. I am talking about the courage to believe that God can move through what seems small, what seems silly, what seems too ordinary to hold power. Because faith does not always come dressed in grandeur. It is not always lightning from heaven or a booming voice in the clouds. Sometimes, faith looks like a handful of salt and a heart that dares to believe that God will meet it in the act. You see, faith must have expression. It is not a thought, it is an action. It is not just a whisper in prayer, but a step forward after you've said amen. Every great move of God in Scripture began not only with belief, but with movement. Noah built. Abraham left. Moses lifted his rod. The widow baked her last bread. Jesus broke the loaves. Every one of them did something. Every one of them moved when faith whispered, go. When you move in faith, you become part of the miracle. You are no longer waiting for heaven to act. You are cooperating with heaven's rhythm. You are saying, God, I may not understand, but I trust that my obedience is the soil where your blessing grows. And oh, how heaven responds to obedience. God delights in the one who moves with trust, not because he needs your action to prove his power, but because he knows the movement of faith is what transforms you. Faith in small things shapes the soul. It teaches you that miracles are not confined to temples and mountains, but can bloom in bathrooms, kitchens, and quiet corners of your home. It teaches you that when your heart moves first, God moves next. And when you combine belief with obedience, you open the door for something far greater than you imagined. Now, child, I know there are those who will scoff. They will say, what can salt do? What can such a small thing mean? And to them I say, God has never needed much to do great things. He turned a shepherd's staff into a serpent, a jar of oil into abundance, a handful of fish into a feast. He took dust and made man. So why would he not take salt and make it sacred? Why would he not use what is small to show his strength? Faith, you see, is not about the object, it is about the obedience. It is about your willingness to take what little you have and place it in his hands. It is about trusting that he can make meaning from the mundane. When you pick up that salt, you are saying, God, I do not understand, but I am willing. And heaven loves a willing heart. There is a quiet power in simple faith. The world tells you that success requires complexity, that power comes from great displays. But faith, real faith, finds its strength in humility. It says, I will do what I can with what I have. And when God sees that, he multiplies it, he magnifies it, he breathes on it. That is why some of the mightiest miracles begin with the smallest acts. Because small acts done in faith carry the weight of heaven. Sometimes you may feel silly. You may wonder, why am I doing this? What if nothing happens? But remember this, faith is not about feelings. It is about trust. When you act in faith, you are telling your fear that it has no final word. You are telling your doubt that it has no throne here. You are telling your spirit, move even if you tremble, because faith that trembles is still faith, and trembling faith is better than silent fear. Every time you move in faith, you rewrite the story of your life. You change the rhythm of your home. You shift the atmosphere of your heart. God meets you where you move. He will not leave you where you stand still, paralyzed by hesitation. When you act in faith, even the smallest act, you invite God's hands into your situation. There are people who pray and wait forever but never move. They say, I'm waiting on God, when in truth God has been waiting on them, waiting for them to step into the water before he parts it, waiting for them to drop the net before he fills it, waiting for them to take the salt and say, Lord, I trust you even here. The miracle, beloved, is not always in the salt. It is in the obedience. The salt is the symbol, the faith is the spark. When you do something symbolic with belief in your heart, you are sending a message to the unseen world. I believe that my God is present even here. That declaration shakes darkness. It confuses doubt. It confuses doubt. It calls angels to attention, because faith moves heaven's armies faster than fear ever could. And do not think that God is measuring the grandeur of your act. He measures the heart behind it. He hears the sincerity behind your whisper. He sees the hope in your eyes when you move in quiet faith, and he honors that, always. There was a woman once who came to Jesus with nothing but a touch. She did not have words, she did not have wealth, she did not have a plan. She only had faith, and she moved. She reached out, trembling, believing that even if she could just touch the hem of his garment, something would change. And it did. Power met movement. Heaven met humanity. Healing met faith. That same power still moves today, but it waits for movement. It waits for your reach, your gesture, your small, faithful act. So when you drop that salt, do not think lightly of it. It is not superstition, it is faith with form. It is prayer made visible. It is you saying, Lord, I trust you in the small things. And when you can trust him in the small things, he will trust you with the great. The salt may dissolve, the water may flow, but your faith remains steady, shining, seen by heaven. Each act of obedience sends a ripple through eternity saying, here is a heart that still believes. So keep moving, beloved. Keep acting, even when the world does not understand. Because faith that moves mountains often begins with faith that moves hands. And when you move your hands in trust, whether to pray, to cleanse, or to pour salt in a toilet, heaven smiles. For it knows that faith has once again found its way into the world, not as a thought, not as a word, but as a living, breathing, moving miracle. There comes a time, my dear, when you must look around and realize that not everything you carry was meant to stay. Some of what clings to you has grown heavy. Old fears, buried anger, memories that ache like bruises you forgot to tend. These things, unseen but deeply felt, linger in the corners of your life the way shadows linger after the sun has set. And it is then that God, in his loving patience, whispers, let it go. When I speak of putting salt in your toilet, I am speaking of a sacred release. It is not about plumbing, it is about purging. It is a holy act of letting go, of saying goodbye to the things that have overstayed their welcome in your spirit. You see, child, salt has a way of drawing out what does not belong. In the body it pulls infection from a wound. In the soul it draws out pain that has hidden itself too long. It tells every heavy thought, every bitter word, every secret sorrow, your time here is done. We live in a world that teaches us to collect. We gather memories, people, pain, and pride. We hold grudges like trophies. We store disappointments like precious stones. But all the while our spirit grows crowded. We become like a room filled with too many things, beautiful perhaps, but suffocating. And in such a room peace cannot breathe, joy cannot stretch its limbs, love cannot rest. There is freedom, my dear, in release. When you walk to that small hidden place in your home and drop that salt into the water, you are not performing a ritual for the sake of motion. You are declaring your freedom. You are saying, I refuse to live surrounded by invisible chains. I refuse to let yesterday's wounds poison tomorrow's blessings. The salt becomes a vessel for your decision. It absorbs the old, carries it away, and leaves behind what is pure. You may not see it, but you will feel it. The air will shift. The heaviness will ease. Your heart will grow lighter, like a window opening to a fresh wind. Because when you finally release what burdens you, you make space for God to move. And child, God cannot fill a vessel that is already full, even if it's full of sorrow. He waits for you to empty what no longer serves you so that he may pour in peace, joy, and clarity. Many of us hold on to what hurts because it's familiar. We cling to anger because it makes us feel strong, to pain because it makes us feel alive, to memories because they remind us we once mattered. But there comes a point when holding on no longer protects. It poisons. The salt reminds you of this. It whispers, cleanse yourself. Do not cling to what makes you ache. There is something greater waiting beyond your grief. And when you let it go, truly let it go, heaven takes notice. Every release on earth creates movement above. The angels rejoice because they know you are stepping into the flow of divine renewal. God designed creation to move. Rivers flow, winds travel, clouds drift, even tears fall. Nothing in nature holds still forever. So why should your spirit, the water that flushes your home, carries away what no longer belongs? Let your soul do the same. Let the waters of faith carry your burdens where they cannot return. You may think it strange, this act of dropping salt into a toilet, but remember this: God has always used the simple to teach the sacred. He turned water into wine. He told Naaman to wash 7 times in the river. He asked Moses to lift a rod, Elijah to pour water on an altar, and a widow to fill jars with oil. Every act was simple, yet every act unlocked heaven's power. Why? Because it required humility, because it required faith, because it required release. You cannot be filled while clinging to what you should have flushed away long ago. That bitterness toward the one who wronged you, that disappointment in yourself, that fear of tomorrow, they are waste, beloved. And waste must be released. You cannot plant flowers in soil that has not been cleared of weeds. You cannot build a temple on ground that still holds rubble. Let the salt remind you, before God can renew, you must remove. Before he can bless, you must make room. There is something beautiful about watching water swirl and disappear. It is nature's own symbol of forgiveness. The water does not question what it carries, it simply takes it, transforms it, and moves on. You must learn to do the same, to forgive without tallying wrongs, to release without looking back, because when you look back too long, you risk becoming like Lot's wife, turned to salt, frozen in the past. But salt, in its holy purpose, does not stand still. It dissolves. It surrenders itself to the water, and in doing so, it transforms. That is the lesson. To dissolve is not to die, it is to become something greater. When you let go of your bitterness, your grief, your fear, you are not losing. You are transforming. You are becoming part of the flow of God's cleansing grace. And oh, how sweet that grace is. It seeps into the cracks of your weary heart. It soothes the wounds that once burned. It fills the empty spaces you thought would never heal. When you let God cleanse you, he doesn't just remove what's wrong, he replaces it with light. He gives you laughter where you once had sorrow, stillness where you once had chaos, wisdom where you once had worry. Some nights you may feel that the pain is too deep to flush away, that no salt could ever draw it out. But hear me, child, there is no depth of hurt that heaven's healing cannot reach. Even if your pain feels like an ocean, God's grace is deeper still. The act may seem small, but the intention is mighty. Each grain of salt carries your faith, your surrender, your yes. And that yes is what summons heaven's help. So the next time you feel the weight of of mistakes, heartbreaks, disappointments, take your salt, speak your prayer, and let it go. Do not clutch it 1 second longer. Watch the water swirl and whisper, this too is leaving me. Then stand tall, knowing that something in the unseen realm has shifted. Letting go is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is strength dressed in surrender. It is courage wrapped in calm. It is faith that trusts God will catch whatever you release. And when you have released it, watch how peace enters your home like a soft wind through an open window. Watch how laughter begins to return. Watch how sleep becomes sweeter. Because when you let go of the toxic, God brings the tender. When you release what is heavy, he gives you what is holy. When you cleanse your space, both seen and unseen, He fills it with His presence. And His presence, beloved, is the purest air your soul can breathe. When you act in obedience, my dear, you invite heaven to draw near. The moment you decide to trust God with your actions, even in the smallest thing, you shift the atmosphere around you. You see, obedience is not simply doing what you are told. It is listening with your heart and responding with your spirit. It is saying, "Yes, Lord," even when your mind does not fully understand the why. It is walking forward in faith, one step at a time, believing that God will reveal the purpose as you move. Transformation is born in that place, the space where obedience and faith meet. It is in that sacred middle ground where the natural touches the divine. God does not move where there is pride or hesitation. He moves where there is surrender. And that is what obedience truly is, a surrender that says, "Lord, I trust you more than I trust myself." Now, the world teaches us to question everything, to analyze, to calculate, to demand proof before action. But heaven works differently. Heaven moves when the heart yields. The Bible tells us that obedience is better than sacrifice because obedience flows from trust. A sacrifice can be given with pride, but obedience requires humility. It demands the courage to say, "God, I may not see what you see, but I believe you." When you pour that salt, when you whisper your prayer and let faith guide your hand, you are doing something that may look foolish to the world but precious to God. Because faith wrapped in obedience always catches His attention. God does not need you to impress Him with grandeur. He delights when you obey in simplicity. You may think, "What can this little act possibly change?" Oh, but beloved, God has always done His greatest work through the smallest acts. A shepherd boy with a sling defeated a giant. A widow with a handful of flour fed a prophet and saw her jar never empty. A man who stuttered parted the Red Sea. None of them knew the power of what they were doing until after they obeyed. And you too will see that your obedience, as humble as it seems, can stir the heavens and change your home. Transformation begins quietly. It starts in the unseen. Just as seeds break open beneath the soil before they bloom, obedience breaks something open in the spirit before the miracle unfolds in your life. When you drop that salt into the water, you may not see anything change at first. But in the silence, in the unseen realm, God is moving. He is cleansing, rearranging, preparing. He is honoring your faithfulness. There are things obedience does that prayer alone cannot. Prayer opens the door, but obedience walks through it. Prayer invites God to move, but obedience says, "Lord, I am ready to move with you." Prayer may call for a miracle, but obedience becomes the vessel that miracle flows through. And when you obey, when you move, something inside you changes too. The act may seem outward, but the transformation begins within. You learn trust, patience, surrender. You learn to quiet the noise of doubt and listen for the still, small voice that whispers truth. You begin to feel God not as a faraway force, but as a present companion. Some people wait their whole lives for God to change their circumstances while refusing to change their hearts. But obedience softens the heart. It teaches humility. It makes you pliable in the potter's hands. When you say yes to what He asks, you give Him permission to mold you, to shape you, to transform you. And transformation, my dear, is not a single act, it is a way of living. It is learning to say yes again and again, even when you are weary, even when you are unsure, even when you are afraid. God never asks for obedience to control you. He asks because He longs to bless you. Each time you trust Him, you position yourself under the open windows of heaven. Each time you obey, you align yourself with His rhythm, and life begins to flow differently, more gently, more powerfully, more purposefully. The storms may not stop, but you will find peace in the rain. The darkness may not vanish overnight, but you will discover that your light grows stronger with every step of faith you take. Do not underestimate the power of your obedience. It is the language of love. It tells heaven, "I trust you." It tells the earth, "I am ready." It tells your soul, "Peace, be still." Every time you choose to obey rather than doubt, you move closer to becoming the person God created you to be. Think of transformation not as a sudden explosion, but as the rising of dawn. The light creeps in softly, but before long it fills every corner. That is what happens when you obey. Light enters slowly, steadily, until every shadow in your life begins to fade. The bitterness that once felt rooted begins to lift. The confusion that clouded your mind begins to clear. The home that felt heavy begins to breathe again. God honors obedience because it shows you trust Him with your unknowns. And when you trust Him, He takes your ordinary and turns it extraordinary. You may begin by simply pouring salt into water, but by the time God finishes, He will have poured peace into your soul. Transformation through obedience is not only about what changes around you, it's about what awakens within you. You begin to see your home differently. You begin to walk differently. Your words grow softer, your spirit grows stronger. You stop fighting for control and start flowing with grace. You begin to understand that God's way is not to rush you, but to renew you. There is a kind of beauty that can only be born through obedience. The beauty of peace after surrender, the glow of trust after fear, the quiet joy of knowing you are in step with something greater than yourself. Obedience builds that beauty in you. It shapes you into someone who does not just believe in God, but lives as though God's promises are already fulfilled. And when transformation comes, and it will come, it won't be loud or dramatic. It will feel like a deep sigh after a long journey. It will be the calm in your chest, the stillness in your home, the quiet assurance that something has shifted and will never be the same again. So, beloved, obey, not because you must, but because you trust. Obey in the little things, in kindness, in gratitude, in prayer, in salt and water. For every act of obedience sends ripples through the universe, calling blessings toward you. And when they come, when your home fills with light, when your spirit feels clean, when peace becomes your natural state, you will understand what obedience truly is. It is the bridge between your hope and God's promise. It is the thread that ties your earthly life to His eternal plan. So, walk in obedience. Move when He says move. Trust when He says trust. And watch how your simple yes turns into a symphony of transformation. For when obedience opens the door, God Himself walks in, and wherever He dwells, everything becomes new.